So we've had the report of the spies as they go out, and they say the land is full of milk and honey. The fruit is incredible, but there's giants in the land. And so what we see in chapter 14, it says, verse 1, then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. So it's the promise of God to go in. He said He'll take care of it, but they've looked at it through their eyes, and they've seen, although it's a great land provision, there's giants there. We can't prevail over these giants. And they've lost faith. I mean, they just came through the Red Sea. They saw Pharaoh's army destroyed. They've been through these incredible things, and now they're thinking so quickly, God can't prevail in this situation. Uh, Verse 2, and all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. So now they're saying that we can't even bear the thought of trying to go in there and fighting, and it would be better if we were already dead. And verse 3, and why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So one of their big complaints and their big reasons for not entering the land is their wives and their children. And we'll see this becomes just something that God turns around and shows them, their total lack of trust, because if God is calling you to do something, He's going to take care of those that He's brought with you. And so it says, so they said to one another, verse 4, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. So they're actually looking for new leadership already, just because they've looked at the situation, they've evaluated it and said, we can't prevail in this because there's giants there. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces. This is just one of the many times in Numbers. We just saw that Moses is called the most humble man on all the earth, and here it says Moses he didn't start arguing with them. It says Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of all the assembly of the congregation of the sons of Israel. And so the way Moses responds to this thing of we're going to look for new leadership and return to Egypt, and our children, our wives are going to perish if we try and go into this land. We can't go into them because what about our kids? And so all Moses does is he falls on his face. He's pleading before God. Moses, if you remember, he didn't say I choose to be the leader of Israel. He was chosen by God. He kind of resisted this, and so he continually goes back to God as his source and say, Lord, you've got to prevail in this situation. In verse 6, Joshua, it says, the son of Nun and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to spy out is exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then He will bring us into this land and give to us a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they shall be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. So here we've got Joshua and Caleb are the only ones that have a good report. And we'll see later on, they're the only ones that God gives the inheritance of this land to. But they have to wait 40 years to get it. Caleb's 40 years old at this time. When he enters the land, he's 80, and he still maintains his strength and amazingly the strength of his faith through all of that time. I don't know how many of you have lived through 40 years of waiting for something. Probably some of the audience isn't even 40 years old, but 40 years of waiting can be a long time when you've got a promise that you've heard at one point and you're still waiting to see it fulfilled. Sometimes it's easy to think, well, that's all past history. But what happens here is, once again, God makes a distinction. And while the people are wanting to stone them, because one, they're thinking, these giants are going to kill our kids and our wives. Don't you have any sense? While Joshua and Caleb are saying, no, if God said it, if God make a proclamation, then He's taken their protection away and He's given us favor. And it doesn't matter who it is we're going up against. It's whose side we're on. And so God makes the distinction by His glory appears in the tent of meeting when this argument goes on and the people are going to begin to stone Joshua and Caleb. I've often thought I'd like to maybe have a company of people that in this day I think a new generation, hopefully in our day, a new generation will be going into a promised land and experience more of God's actual promises. They'll get a hold of the book and say, hey, we're not living in that. That's not what God's promised. We're living far from that. And I've thought, I want to be in the Joshua and Caleb group at this point that says, okay, I've waited for a long time. I want to go in with this new generation. That's just a little aside here. Verse 11, and the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? How long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? We say, yeah. So here, they forgot the signs very quickly. I'm sure they were rejoicing and dancing after they came through the Red Sea. They were playing the tambourine and singing around and dancing, but, it didn't take long to forget all of that. Verse 12 says, I will smite them with pestilence and dispossess them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. Once again, God is saying, okay, Moses, hey, you're obedient, you're following me. How about if I just eliminate all of these people and I'll just take you? I'll start with you and make a new nation. And what an honor to Moses. It would be hard to say, Lord, I think that's a good idea. But what we see here is Moses as a type of Christ in the Old Testament. He's also that great intercessor. And we see once again Moses begins to intercede for the people. And in verse 15 he says, now if thou dost slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of thy fame will say, because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath, therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness. But now I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as thou hast declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. Here Moses turns when God declared his name before him in Exodus, he said this very thing. So Moses turns it around and says, God, this is who you said you are. This is who you are. You're slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness or mercy, and forgiving iniquity. And so then he uses God's own nature and to plead on behalf of the people. And in verse 19, he says then, pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, according to the greatness of thy loving kindness, just as thou also hast forgiven this people from Egypt even till now. So he's pleading with the Lord and saying, by your own nature, Lord, forgive them. And of course, God's not, I think in this whole thing, God is drawing this out of Moses. He's drawing this because he's wanting Moses to intercede with God's own heart, because God did reveal what he's like. And so Moses has captured the very character of God in the revelation that he's had of God, and by his close relationship in being with God, even speaking to him face to face, Moses has attached this very nature of God. And so when God says, I'm going to destroy these people, he throws that out, and I can just start with you. Moses says, oh, no, Lord, you're not like that. Remember, this is what you said. And of course the Lord knows that. But what he's doing is he's drawing this out, and he's bringing a picture of what his heart is. A lot of times we think immediately, if something does something wrong, let's destroy them. Let's reject them. Let's see them die. Let's get rid of them. And the whole thing about the Lord, and we see that it's the theme of the whole Bible, and it's the predominant thing that happens in the end of the Bible, I believe, and it happened at the life of Jesus, is God doesn't delight in the destruction or the death. What he wants to do is he wants to raise things from the dead. His power is not in destroying. Anybody can destroy. A little child with a gun can destroy a life. But who can bring life? So God's glory is not destroying life, but God's glory is in bringing life. It's from raising up from the dead. It's from bringing life out of that which has been totally lost. And here, even we see that here in this place, where these people that have seen all the wonders and signs have still rejected God, that his desire still here is to still give them an inheritance, to give them a hope, even after their disobedience. And so we see that as a major theme that's throughout the Bible.